All right, Ryan.
Okay, so this week's prompt is focus on the defining the ethics as a group, exploring how ethics shape leadership and how ethical behavior is reflected in public leadership. I kind of combined all of the highlighted questions or topics to discuss into like categorized subjects of ethics and leadership. So for myself, I think leaders inspire others to be ethical. No matter what the style of leadership there is, there are ethical behaviors to consider in the leadership between leaders and the people they influence. I personally think that true measure of leadership is that ethical influence that the leader has on his or her own followers, even possibly the stakeholders of the organization. An ethical leader is one that considers positives and negative views and the rights of everybody involved, and they ensure that the decisions that are being made are made in an ethical manner, and members are held accountable for those decisions that occur. Secondly, I would say that the leaders are always on stage, no matter if it's like private or in a group or in public. I view ethics as being connected to ways that the leaders interact with their followers and others who they surround, and how leaders act when they think that no one is around. They always have eyes on them in some kind of category. The ethical actions that leaders enhance their own, or sorry, the ethical the actions that the leaders utilize enhance their own credibility at the end of the day, and really highlights their integrity that they show to their followers or anybody in the organization. In addition to that, I think that leaders communicate with care is a huge ethical way to approach private communications or public communications with any kind of follower. Great leaders encourage people from all walks of life, and even though little leadership, or even with little leadership experience, they develop their leadership abilities, which creates an ultimate leadership-centered culture, I feel. When leaders generate a team that's ethically organized by the leader, they become in charge of creating that learning organization where they're not going to prohibit anybody from growing. They encourage any walk of life to grow and explore their own abilities that they can utilize for their accomplishments. And then another big thing is leaders need to be able to admit their mistakes. People expect that leaders do a good job by acting upon what they know, or to be honest in certain situations. And in this sense, I think being ethical requires being vulnerable as well. When a leader is openly expresses their own lack of ability or understanding, they're an example to the community that they're representing, and they show that it's a safe environment and that people are free to make mistakes and ask questions if there's any hesitancy. Ultimately, leaders have a lot of responsibility. Through the practice of their own settings, leaders build trust by demonstrating the competency of authentic leadership. An ethical leader has the ability to be genuine, and they provide followers a safety net, then offers opinions and ideas of how to get things done correctly and ethically as well. At the end of the day, leaders inspire everybody they surround. So it is their job to be honest, despite if it's a one-on-one conversation or if it's a room full of people. A leader wants to be able to provide a bunch of ideas and alternative ways to handle things so that the success of the company is taken care of appropriately. That's what I have.
Awesome. First of all, I wanted to say I'm so glad you're on my group, Angelica. That was amazing. So you basically summed up everything that I feel. I really liked how you said that leaders highlight their mistakes as well. Like, it's okay to be vulnerable and honest, because leaders should be able to feed off their energy and their work ethic to their employees, and it's how they act when they're not looking that truly matters. So I do want to thank you for pointing that out. That was awesome. So for mine, I said that ethics govern a person's behavior to sum up how they feel in regards to their morals, values, rights, and wrongs. As a leader, you have to remember to hold true to your ethics so that others will want to reflect on them as well. To be an ethical leader is not to be largely responsible for their own actions, but they're accountable for the actions of others too. So basically, what everybody does as a leader, like you have to accept full responsibility for being the head guidance of the organization. So it's okay to make mistakes just as long as we, point them out. And as an ethical leader, you do have the more responsibility for others. So if you have failed as an ethical leader, then you aren't like providing your employees with enough resources in order to reflect themselves off to be the best that they can be. So one of those things that's really important is effective teamwork and communication. And it always goes back to like the culture of the organization as well, and just making sure that everything is very well rounded. If the ethics of the business is good, then everything else will take it from there. Like the metrics of it, the growth of it. If the good intentions are not there from the start, the organization is just going to fail because the employees are not motivated to do their best and they don't want to come into work. So in the text, it states that the highest form of ethical reasoning is based on broad principles like justice, cooperation, and respect for others. So that's another important factor as well, especially when leaders are visible to the public eye. You want to be the person that they want to model themselves after. So that's what I have. Let me switch it over to Ryan.
Okay, hey guys. So I was going to start with a quote from John Wooden. He states that the true test of a man's character is what he does when no one is watching. And I think you guys both touched on that. It has a lot more to do with, how you lead and what example you present for others and what you do when people aren't around is just as important as what you do and the things that they watch. And if I were to define ethics, I believe it would be, essentially standards or moral principles that manage one's behavior or the way they conduct themselves. And it's basically what people ought to do. It's the difference between what is right, wrong, understanding it, and acting on it. And so from the text, with leadership, there are ethical challenges and this is a set of tasks and expectations. Some of these would be responsibility, power, privilege, loyalty, and responsibility. And how leaders respond to these challenges certainly determines whether they cast more light or more shadow. And James Rest, from the Center of the Study of Ethical Development at the University of Minnesota, he said there's two components, moral sensitivity and moral judgment. Moral sensitivity is identifying the existence of ethical problems, so basically understanding that there is a problem in the first place. Because we can't solve a problem if we don't know that it exists. We have to recognize it. And then the second, moral judgment, would be deciding which course of action identified in the first component is the right one to follow. So basically, decision makers need to determine what's right or wrong and then act on it accordingly. And I went through the text as well and took two more from the fourth component: moral motivation, which refers to following through on choices. So it's the desire to do the right thing, and it generally comes in conflict with other values like security, wealth, and social acceptance. So, unfortunately, as a leader, sometimes you have to make an ethical decision that may not be the warm and fuzzy one. It may not be the one that, helps your friendships or things of that nature, but it just has to be done because it's the right decision. And that's one that leaders are faced with. And the other one is moral character, which kind of leads me to how it started. And it's the implementation stage of the model. And you have factors such as opposition, fatigue, distractions that are basically barriers to ethical action. So So again, I think the reality is it's easier, and sometimes the path of least resistance is one that's less ethical, but a true leader maintains a level of priority on the ethical action and decision. Okay.
Okay, so first, I kind of want to point out how perfect of timing this is about talking about ethics, especially in the public sector with public leadership, with everything that's been going on PR-wise with like United, because I feel like that's one of their, I think that's the core problem that they're facing right now, is that they're not focusing on their ethics. They're just kind of letting their actions speak instead of thinking about what's going on ethically in terms of their decisions, and that comes down to their leaders. So when the question asks how does leadership affect, or how does ethics affect leadership, and how does it build leadership, it really shows that, you know, the whole trickle down theory and all of that crazy stuff, where if your leaders aren't ethical and if they're not showing what is right and what is wrong, that goes all the way down to the grunt level at the bottom. And, you know, I really, really, really liked the whole vulnerable point that you guys made, because it's so true. People want to be hard all the time, and they always want to show that they always know what they're doing, and they can't accept responsibility when the responsibility is on the bad side. They only want to accept it when they're actually properly working. But if anything goes wrong, then they try to point blame. But that's not ethics, and that's not leadership. So, you know, making sure that you always want to work ethically, and you always keep that in the back of your mind when you make decisions, because even though you feel like no one's watching, you know, Big Brother's out there and everyone's got their smartphones and everyone talks, and with social media being the way it is, that there's really nothing to hide anymore. It is so hard to hide things that there's really no point to even try to work around the system. You just want to be able to be a role model all the time. Even if, you know, you're home alone and there's no one here, you still want to act like you would if your entire team was in your bedroom with you and you're getting ready. So it's, when it comes to ethics, to me, it's like you always want to live by them, and it's not just a mask that you put on when you go to work, or a mask that you put on when you go to, you know, public meetings with your counselors and random other political parties and things. So the ethical behavior that you display really comes down to who you are as a person and what you believe in, because people can see past that mask really quickly if it really is just a mask. But yeah, I think it's funny, the timing wise with United, because I think that's their issue. But that's close to all we have, and I think we're at 15 minutes, so.
Alrighty, so I'm going to end the broadcast, and then we can keep talking about our leadership project.